Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another episode of The Gauntlet here on NGBN TV, where we're trying to provide entertainment to, middle-aged men that deal with all sorts of mental health issues. November was Men's Mental Health Month. So broadcasting on there and all of our other platforms with Sideline Sports Network. So let me get the crew in the house because it's been a couple weeks since we had like a fully loaded squad on here for the Gauntlet. So you guys know Lindy, our special guest man. Lindy has been working with me for a while. So let's hear it for Lindy, man. Lindy, partner with the LinkedIn podcast, coming in to fill in for Dom, who our thoughts are with him. He's sick tonight. So Lindy, let's hear it for Lindy, ladies and gentlemen.
You you already know how we you already know how we do on LinkedIn, man. And I think this is only the second Gauntlet episode that I have joined, so it's a nice change of pace.
Yeah, man, we hope that you will be a part of a whole lot more. And we got some people saying hello in the comments before we start the show. We got Jennifer. What's up, Jennifer? And Grizz. Of course, he's always here. So, and he also says Lindy is the goat. So, we got
Yeah.
we got Grizz in the house. So, guys, we know how we start the show every week. Sports morons of the week. For those of you that don't know, if you live under a rock or something, this is where we look at the dumbest things and the dumbest parts of sports. It can be a quote, it can be a player, something that happened in an actual game. Anything that you can think of that's just completely stupid. So, Lindy, you're our guest tonight. I'm going to give the floor to you. Do you have a sports moron that you want to share?
I could probably use the one that I had to send you earlier, just because I was sitting on X or Twitter, just scrolling through. I was actually on Zach Ertz watch, but in the middle of that, I see man, Jam- Jamal Adams, dude, like something's got to be up with you, man. Like you're gonna get hurt that bad over what some reporter makes a joke about how you got caught in 4K during the game having real bad coverage on Blake Ferguson in that Seahawks and Dallas game, because I ended up watching it. And oh my god, he posted the guy posted something along the lines of yikes, and I think it had to do with that play. So Jamal comes back at him. The dude literally takes a picture of him, crops him out just a little bit, and focuses more on his wife and says yikes back at him. Like, dude, what are you doing? You're hurt that bad that you're gonna insult the looks of his wife. You're taking it that personally on Twitter and what everybody's saying on social media. Like, man,
Yeah.
you set yourself up for that, man. I mean, come on, come on, like, cut it
I
out.
mean, I saw a picture. I didn't think his wife was that bad looking, but it was really stupid of him. I mean,
No, it's
he also gave up a wide open touchdown, which was the
yeah,
clip that the guy showed. So
it was
yeah,
awful.
yeah, that's definitely a good one. Jay, do you have one?
Yeah, I got one. I'll go real quick. So this has kind of been weighing on me, and I've been debating on should I bring it up or not. But I mean, hey, anything's better than nothing, right? So just so everyone knows out there, I have absolutely zero problems with quarterback Jaden Daniels for LSU. I think the dude's awesome. Okay. And right now he's in the top three in the Heisman race. Now the two quarterbacks, one of the two who's going to win the trophy, is about to play right now. Jaden Daniels, though, he's had an awesome season. My sports moron is to anybody who thought he was a Heisman contender because he threw 8 touchdown passes against Georgia State. It's Georgia State, not Georgia. Had he done this against Georgia, oh, absolutely. He probably should be the leading guy. But this is Georgia State. He did it against a cupcake opponent. You're supposed to throw 8 touchdown passes against Georgia State, okay? When you're LSU or Bama or Texas or Ohio State or something like that. But this is my problem. And this is why they show so much favoritism toward the SEC. is because when he does it against Georgia State, it gets praised. Now, had that have been Ohio State or a Pac-12 school or Clemson or something like that, it would have been ostracized. Oh, you did it against a cupcake team. So why is it that when they do it, it's okay? I think it's about time people get on the even plane here. A cupcake team is a cupcake team to a major opponent. The fact that he threw 8 TD passes against them, now 8 TD passes, I get it, that's cool. But doing that against them, it shouldn't vault you up into the Heisman conversation. But that's my take. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, he's had an incredible season. He's got 50 total touchdowns for the season, 40 passing touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. He was having a really good season. I think Bo Nix is probably going to win it.
Yeah.
He's a betting favorite, but yeah, I mean, I think he's had a good season.
No, Jaden Daniels, and like I said, Jaden Daniels has had an amazing season. It's just it was this performance that vaulted him into the Heisman conversation, which I disagree with. When you throw 8 passes against Georgia and beat the number 1 team, they should probably hand you the trophy there. But it's Georgia State, that ain't it. This is somebody trying to show favoritism toward the SEC because let's face it, a quarterback from the Pac-12 school for the second year in a row is going to win the Heisman.
Okay. Yeah. All right. You know what? That's definitely a good sports moron. JJ, do you have any sports moron or do you want me to go ahead?
I don't have one.
He doesn't have one, ladies and gentlemen. So I've actually been really enjoying
that.
I've actually been.
What's up, X Factor? Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, what's up, X Factor? I've actually been reading a lot of Grizz's comments, so I'm gonna get to this one. Craig Carton, who works for FS1, he has a show on there. So they're talking about the big matchup that Lindy and I are going to talk about tomorrow on LinkedIn between the San Francisco 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles. And the big thing that everyone's been talking about this week is how the San Francisco 49ers are favored. And, should they be favored? The Eagles being disrespected, all this stuff. But if you want to say the 49ers deserve to be the favorites, whatever. That's okay. But what's not okay is what this dude said. He said the 49ers deserve to be the favorites. And instead of just stopping there, he goes on and he says, because the Philadelphia Eagles have not played any great teams this
season. What?
Before the season, people were saying all the stuff about the Eagles schedule. They were saying, they're going to play the Dolphins, they're going to play the Bills, they're going to play the Chiefs, they're going to play all these great teams, and they're not going to win those games. They're only going to win games against cupcakes on the schedule, which there's not very many of, by the way. And they, so far, have beat all those teams, but you're going to tell me that the 49ers should be favored, not because you think they're a better team, because you want to diss the Eagles and say they haven't played anybody, even though they have.
Before you continue, what was the Eagles' strength of schedule rank coming into the year? I know it was top 5.
Number 1.
They had the toughest schedule.
It's
exactly.
Number 1.
Go ahead.
But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I got to say about that.
For him to say that, and let's totally dismiss the fact that the Cowboys literally beat their hardest. I'm sorry, X Factor. I know that's your team. A good win last night, but that was the hardest opponent. The hardest win. Your best win this season was against Seattle last night. But the Eagles ain't played nobody?
They played the Cowboys. Gonna play them again too.
Yeah, that's insane.
Is he like somebody that doesn't like the Eagles? Is he like a no?
Yeah, he's just a hater. He's just a hater. They're winning all these close games. Blah blah blah. They haven't played anybody, and they still haven't played anybody. So
you should tell him.
I don't know if they win this week. If they win this week, I have no idea what's gonna happen.
Y'all should tell him
not play anybody.
Y'all should tell him. You haven't played anybody either, as in him himself. You haven't played nobody either, bro.
I mean, like.
That was just such a dumb. It was just a ridiculous thing to say.
He sounded like another Chris Sims.
I don't really care. Like, I don't really care if someone gets on here and says, Yeah, well, I just think the 49ers are a better team. If you think that, okay, you can think that, but you're saying that the Eagles haven't played any great teams. All the teams that people thought they were going to lose to, they
They beat.
beat all those teams. They weren't supposed to beat the Chiefs. They weren't supposed to beat the Dolphins. They weren't supposed to beat all these teams that were on the schedule, but they did. But now that they actually beat them, you're mad. And another thing I have a problem with is everyone bringing up all these plays that went in the Eagles' favor, like drop passes, like Valdez-Scantling with the Chiefs, and the last play in overtime with Josh Allen when he missed Gabe Davis for a touchdown. Listen, when the Eagles are put in these situations where they have to make plays, they're making the plays. The other teams are not making the plays when it's time for them to make the plays. That's not our fault. That's your fault. So you're mad about something that these other teams should be mad about. You're mad about the Eagles doing what they're supposed to do and other teams not. So that's a personal problem.
Yeah,
That's a personal problem.
he just sounds like the type of person where if it's your team that ain't dominating, he'll say, "Oh well, y'all ain't a real team because y'all on a real juggernaut. Y'all not dominating." But if it's his team that has a close win, oh well, good teams find a way to win. You know, someone who keeps like shifting the goalpost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I understand shock analysts and shock talk and all that, but the least you can do when you do that is make a tad bit of sense. Like you said, if you picked even JJ picked the Niners on picked off, and he had a good take behind it. It's one thing to pick the Niners. It's another thing to say, well, it's because the Eagles ain't played nobody. Now, if he tells you in the same breath that the Chiefs are a top tier team in the NFL, but the Eagles just beat them after being down at halftime.
So the Cowboys are nobody, the Chiefs are nobody, the Dolphins are nobody, the Bills are nobody. Does anybody know who would be somebody? Or
the Vikings are nobody for what it's worth in week 2, because the Vikings were set to be a playoff team this year until Kirk Cousins went out and they tried the Josh Dobbs project, and that hasn't been working out very well. So I mean, the NFC was looking like another powerhouse from last year to this year. AFC was going to remain the same, although nobody really seen the Jaguars to this point being as good as they are amongst other people in the dogfight, because I think the AFC wild card is in a bloodbath right now. So it's just insane with like moving the goalposts with who the Eagles played and who they didn't. And I think this is the same guy in the midst of that same conversation. I was seeing stuff about it on X, and people were saying that he was mentioning the Chargers for whatever reason. Dude, the Eagles haven't played the Chargers since Hurts' first season as a starter. We haven't played them in 2 years. So why are they even in the conversation?
I have no idea. But another thing that now that you brought up the Chargers, what about the ESPN analytics, like top teams list? So they had the Eagles ranked as the 7th best team in the league, despite being a 10-1 record.
Yep.
And they had like 4 or 5 of the teams on the list are teams that the Eagles already beat this season. Like Miami, Chiefs, the Bills, the Cowboys was all ranked higher.
The Chargers were on the list, and they're 4-7.
I think the Chargers were 8. The Chargers were 1 spot behind the Eagles.
Yeah.
So
that's why I couldn't take that serious.
It's ridiculous, man. But I knew Sports Moron was going to be really long tonight, so that's why we didn't have time to step into the Gauntlet. We're going to move on to Gauntlet Grinders, which is where we look at top performances from the previous week. We usually pick one guy from the AFC and NFC and say, yes, this guy was on his grind. This guy had a phenomenal game. So for my AFC Gauntlet Grinder, I'm going to go with Josh Allen. Not the Josh Allen from the Buffalo Bills, but from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Anytime that he needed to make a play against the Houston Texans, he made it. And he finished the game with like 2.5 sacks. He was giving the Texans offensive line major problems. Got to CJ Stroud on the last drive, sacked him, took him out of field goal range. So I'm definitely going to give him some major props. And I'm also going to be a little bit biased here and give the Gauntlet Grinder NFC to Jalen Hurts and what he did in the second half We're going to talk a lot more about his performance on the LinkedIn podcast tomorrow, Lindy and I. But this guy continues to show up when it matters the most. Game-winning touchdown in overtime, rushing touchdown. The play that he made, 3rd and 15, to take the lead in the fourth quarter, Zacchaeus, he rolls out of the pocket, sets his feet, and just fires it where no one else can get it. Jalen Hurts, the reason why that I think he should be the MVP is because of what he continues to do when it matters the most. So Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, this is my 2 gauntlet grinders for this week.
Okay.
TJ?
NFC, I'm gonna give it to a guy that I find it very interesting that yes, he has his woes, but you're having a great season, and that's Dak Prescott. 4 touchdowns against the Commanders. Well, yes, it is the Commanders, but he played essentially a near perfect game. And if you look at the outlook of his season, he's having a very, very great season. He's doing very well with that team. And I will echo the same thing with Josh Allen, because I was going to mention him too, just because of the simple fact of the matter is he don't like being called the other Josh Allen, and he's not being called the other Josh Allen now. Like, he's starting to cement himself, and they faced a tough Houston squad that was riding high. A lot of people had them going, and he made exactly like James said, the plays he needed to make to help those Jaguars stay on top in the AFC South. So I do give it to Josh Allen, the Jaguars guy, and Dak Prescott, the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys.
Lindy?
It's looking like 2 quarterbacks for me, I think, between the AFC and the NFC. Number 1 is an interesting one because of the legacy he's essentially having to replace for this franchise, for one, and 2, people putting him in the same kind of statistical conversation with Carson Wentz and looking like he's going to throw for 4,000 without having a single receiver over 500, and that's Jordan Love. I remember it's almost recent history that this guy just the amount of times he's been up and down, the lack of confidence that a lot of people had in him, and having to live up to an expectation that was very difficult to either match or eventually overcome with Aaron Rodgers departing Green Bay. And they come into this game, they go into hostile territory against a very formidable Detroit Lions team that was 8-2 going in. Green Bay's trying to get back to 500. He goes in 22 of 32 for 268 and 3 touchdowns. I think Christian Watson was just under 100 yards for that game. But to go into hostile territory in Detroit, who they have very strong aspirations this year, he takes them down. I think it was a 7-point game, 29-22. So I'm kind of happy for him. It's good to see players. It's good to see players rise above or rise to the occasion when they've had little stock put in them at one point in time. So I was happy to see that result. The next one is kind of similar, but to the degree of that this kid has been being one of the top draft choices, and another Carson Wentz comparison and everything, and the Jaguars and Texans game, what Trevor Lawrence did in taking out the Texans, and all of the attention that CJ Stroud has been getting for how darn good he's been playing for them. And Trevor Lawrence had a game where he's like, hey, remember me?
Fantastic.
The Jags had some difficult times early in the year, but now they're coming up with Dougie P. They're 8-3. They're undefeated. They're undefeated in their away games. You don't see that very often. So he goes in against the Texans, 23-38 for almost 400 yards. He threw 364 for a touchdown. I mean, you know, Calvin Ridley gets back into the mix, building a chemistry with him. So, yeah, I got two quarterbacks between the NFC and the AFC for this week.
Sweet. Um, so mine, and to echo real quick on your Jordan Love pick, because he actually was gonna be one of mine, and but you got it, man. Um, Jordan Love finally had his game.
Mm-hmm.
He finally had his game. To me, that was his breakout game. And what a better time on Thanksgiving, you know?
Yep.
That should give Packers fans an awesome feeling if, Tyler, you're watching this. But that definitely should give Packers fans great feelings about Jordan Love. So shout out to him. But my gauntlet grinder, I'm going to go ahead and give it to Patrick Mahomes. Came down 14 to the Raiders, even though theoretically that should be no problem, and it wasn't a problem because they won 31-17. He threw 27 for 34, 298, 8.8 yards per attempt, 2 touchdown passes, and had a passer rating of 122.8. So speaking of remember me guys, he also said this amongst the Hurts talk, you know. But I mean that's no new information. We know it's them too, and I know we're going to get to Jalen Hurts here in a bit. My NFC gauntlet grinder, I'm actually going to give it to Bijan Robinson. He has 16 carries
Yes.
for 91 yards and a touchdown. He averaged 5.7 yards per attempt. He had 3 receptions for 32 yards for a touchdown reception. This guy was awesome. And I knew that he was going to be a stud coming out of the University of Texas. Definitely looking forward to more years and seeing him play. He they get their stuff together on that offense, you know, and it ain't just him because Ritter had to he overcame 2 Ritter interceptions to even like win that game, you know.
Yep.
But Bijan Robinson stepped up when needed to, and he's got an offensive player of the year in his back pocket for the future. I'll just say that right now. And those are my gauntlet grinders.
Yeah, Jordan Love definitely had his breakout game and made Packers fans happy, but you know who he didn't make happy is Dom DeRubeis. He ruined Dom's Thanksgiving. Sorry, I just had to take that shot at Dom, even though he's sick. So let's talk about some current events, guys.
Yeah, that loss made him sick.
Well, he would actually probably say that he's used to the Lions doing that on Thanksgiving, even though they're good this year. Every other year they've been trash. But the Panthers has fired head coach Frank Reich after a 1-10, 1-11 start, or whatever it is. Here's what I have to say about this. Number one, Frank is getting older, so he's probably done trying to be a head coach. I don't see him trying to take another job. If you looked at him from the start of the season to now, he looks like a completely different person. The coach in the Panthers has aged him, has stressed him out to so many levels. I just kind of feel bad for him. I really don't think it was his fault. I think the Panthers was a dysfunctional mess, and I think he kind of had it coming because of what he was going into was a dysfunctional mess and didn't really have anything to work with. Don't really have any players. You definitely don't have an O line, and you don't have receivers. And there was also reports that Frank actually did want to draft CJ Stroud instead of Bryce Young. But the GM or somebody was like, no, you got to take Bryce Young and force him to do that. So you're kind of handcuffing him from the start. It's a mess. The team stinks. He didn't really have anything to work with, and they're 1-10. They just fired him. They don't have a first-round pick next year. So whatever coach comes to Carolina is going to come into a dysfunctional mess, just like I said Frank did, and it's not going to change anything. The Panthers are probably still going to be a bad team next year. So
Yeah.
that's what I have to say.
No, absolutely. You know, crazy because just under a year ago, Texans were looking for a new head coach, and the consensus was, "Yo, that is a job I don't think anyone wants to take." D'Amico took it, and then now look at the Texans. You look at the Panthers, though. Okay, did you know they have had, including interim head coaches following firings, they've had 6 in 6 years. See, all this time we'd heard, "Oh, how bad Matt Rule was," right?
Yep.
And then he gets fired. They bring in Frank Reich, and he gets fired. Again, 6 and 6 years, including interims. It's time to admit that the front office is the problem. I'm not even holding this year to Bryce Young. Again, it's 1 year. For all we know, he could blow us away next year if they happen to draft right, get some weapons. And I mean, just a flat out, like, you supposed to let your coach. I'm glad to the high heavens we got CJ Stroud, okay? But speaking objectively
Should
here,
be.
your coach, your quarterback, your top defensive player, like, you consult with them. Yo, who do you want? Who do you want? How do you go over your coach? I know you're the front office and you're above him, but your coach runs your team on the field. They run the team on the ground. How do you go against him? And 1 in 10 is what you get. And I'm not going to put everything on Young or anything. The team is just terrible. It is. You know, good luck to whoever takes that job. There's got to be some coach somewhere that needs to make a little bit of money, and that's probably why they're gonna. That's probably why they're gonna even take the job in the first place. But yeah, it is absolutely time to say that that the front office is the problem, and I wouldn't be surprised if we started hearing chants from the crowd toward the end of the season.
I'm
JJ,
pretty
what you
sure
got?
nobody that's a top coaching candidate, like none of the top candidates, coordinators, and stuff that's up and coming is going to want that job. But JJ,
I wouldn't blame
do
him.
you have
I
any thoughts
dis-
about it?
I disagree with you guys wholeheartedly on that coaching job situation because if I'm a coach and I want to show my skills, I want to be a part of a rebuild. We just mentioned Houston. We weren't saying Houston was a job anybody wanted last year, and now all of a sudden Houston is great. Why can't it be Carolina as well? I don't think it's a bad coaching job at all. I don't think it's a bad situation. I just think it's a situation that requires somebody to put some work. If you're not ready to put some work, then you're not fit to be a coach, in my opinion. You're not fit to be for the organization that is struggling and trying to come up from the ashes. I don't think Bryce Young's a bad quarterback, and I don't care that they wanted to draft. He wanted to draft C.J. Stroud over him. You don't have an offensive line. C.J. Stroud will look just as bad if he didn't have the offensive line or have anything, which was a staple of anyone that comes from San Francisco. You build your line. I don't. I think Frank was in a rough spot, but I don't think it's the worst situation to have be in. I think they still do have talent on that team. They still have a defensive players. They just need to get an offensive line. They have decent running backs. They got the one from Philadelphia. They can't run the football anymore. I mean, Frank was up against it, but if I am a coach looking for me a chance to sit there and really do something my way, I'm going to Carolina because I get a chance to put the culture I want in. I get the chance to put the players and put the practices, put everything in my way, which is exactly what D'Amico Ryans did when he got to Houston. It was his way, how he wants it, how he likes it, what he does, what he's doing. Dan Campbell was the same way when he got with Brad Holmes in Detroit. My way, how I want it, how I want to do it. And look at those teams now turning it around. So I kind of disagree with you guys on this situation. I would look at Carolina as a great opportunity to see if I'm really cut out to be an NFL coach. And I would
I
take
mean,
that.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
how
I'm
can you
real,
say
real quick.
that? How can you say that the Panthers is going to let another coach come in and like select what players they want when they literally just went over to coach and said, "No, you can't draft this guy. You have to draft."
Prospective
Everybody's different.
coaches, they're going to see that coach got undermined
Everybody,
it, and they're
everybody,
not going to want that job.
everybody's different. If I'm a coach and I'm saying, you want me? This is what I come with. It's like Jim Harbaugh. That's the reason why I hated him in San Francisco. You want me? You get this and you get what I get with this. So if you're going to take this job and you're offering me the job, you're going to have to compromise too. It doesn't have to be done. Frank may not have been the strongest person to sit there and go at them the way he did. I don't think I think there are other people out there that are a little bit more strong and mentally sound to do like, no, I hear you, but you asked me to coach these players and build a team that helps you win, then you're going to listen to my input on who I want, which is exactly what happened with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes. They talk to each other all the time, and Dan made it very known. I think a player coach like that could do the same thing.
You know, one thing that made the Texan situation so much easier is Nick Casario and everybody else. Right. I'm talking about that night when they drafted C.J. Stroud. They went to him and said, "Who do you want?" He said, "Tank Dell," and they went and got him. They went to their quarterback. See, this is the type of stuff that they want, and you know what? I I get what you're saying. Okay, it's like, listen, if I'm going to work here, it's got to be like this, or I'm walking. You know, it's just unattractive whenever other prospective coaches see the front office undermine the very man that's supposed to be running the team on the ground. It's just not going to look appealing. They're going to go elsewhere.
So why did your team was just like that for a long time? Bob there with the inmates and the Texans, nobody wanted to go to that squad. They said Lovey was just a stopgap and everything. What made him go?
Somewhere along the line, it changed. I don't know if they had a coming to
So
Jesus meeting behind
what?
closed doors,
So what's to
but
stop Carolina from doing the same? There's nothing that you can say that can stop that. You can't. We can't definitively say that. We don't know. But what I'm saying is, I'm not going to look at that situation and be scared to go there because if I'm a coach and I think I'm a great coach and I'm afraid to go to a situation that may be bad that I feel like I can turn around. If I feel like I'm a Coach Carter type situation, why would I not look at that situation and think of a possible opportunity for me to come of age with it? I wouldn't. I'm a Coach Carter type person. I believe in my skill set. I believe in what we can do. I don't care what situation it is. I'm going after there. I'm going.
Lindy, what you got, man?
Didn't Frank have similar issues that he didn't last as long with the Colts either? So, he was the one that was dubbed that he was going to bring Carson Wentz back to form. It didn't work. He goes to Carolina, and then there's a fine line in a combination between developing a culture and seeing if that culture produces a result such as wins. I don't think Frank is the type of individual that can achieve both in equal form. He may have created a good culture between both of these organizations as a head coach, but as being Carson was the type of quarterback he was, and what we've known through Philadelphia, there was probably there's probably some tension ties there, and what have you. But he comes to the Panthers, and it's a little bit different, where he's trying to establish something new. There's a level of guys that probably want to play for him, but it's what you're doing isn't producing any wins. And that's kind of hard to do in a sense. And you talk about the front office and everything, and it's like, okay, well, if Frank is the production manager and you got CEOs and owners and whatnot for this business, and the production manager says one thing, and like you project this idea of, okay, well, this is how we can make more product, and I need this, this, and this. Well, ownership is not on the same page with you, and they go and do, essentially, they bring in stuff that's going to create the opposite. If there's a disconnection there, then you can't create anything in unison. Um, so I don't know along the lines of that, but there's also, didn't they let go of Deuce Staley too? I mean, it
Yep.
wasn't just Frank. I think Deuce was let out, and it's, man, the dumpster fire levels are like, the heat just keeps rising. But I don't know. My point is that there's too much conflicting between what one person wants and another person wants, and if you don't have the same vision, if you don't have the same communication, you're destined to fail. And in the end, Frank, across all accounts, he tried his darndest, but he was destined to fail with a combination of the front office and really himself, because I don't think Frank has had a whole lot of head coaching experience anyway. So I mean, the whole the whole situation and the system that they tried to build, just wasn't a good product overall.
Nah, it sure wasn't. That's a lot of really good points, guys. If you're just now tuning in to the show, this is a Gauntlet where we talk everything about the NFL with a spicy twist here on NGBN TV and the Sideline Sports Network. Moving on, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles week 1 of this season, but he has now returned to practice. guys, is Aaron coming back to the field this season? Yes or no?
Let me take lead on that one.
Go ahead.
I will say this, and I remember I'll shout out to Darian Ponce Michael, the Cowboy fan. Y'all may know him. Y'all may have interacted with him. If you are a healthy eater and you take care of your body the nutritional way, you do have a chance to heal faster. You do have a chance because you're providing your body with the nutrients it needs to build get its strong bones to heal any type of ailment or injury that you have. Do I think it's smart? Well, no, because their offensive line is trash. So you can heal, but you could be back in the same situation if you bring them back. I think at the end of the day, I'm also looking at the outlook of the AFC. Do you realistically think that you can bring him back, make a push to the playoffs, and then go far? Which is the reason why you brought him in, is to take this team to the next level. I don't think they should. I understand what he's trying to do. I feel like that maybe he's looking at the outside looking in, like he really may only have a year left or so. So he's like, he's got to make it through or whatever. But it's like, at the end of the day, I don't think you're going to go anywhere. I don't think you're going to go anywhere this year. So I wouldn't even risk it. I don't even think I think it would be pointless, but that's just me.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think if the Jets was actually still in contention and had something to play for, then I might be able to see it. But, if he comes back and plays, like, what is he? He's just playing just to play, and the season's almost over anyway. So I just don't think it's worth any risk that could be involved because we've seen stuff happen before. I don't think we've seen someone heal from an Achilles at such a rapid rate, which has been crazy if you follow the Aaron Rodgers situation this season. But even with Golden State, when Kevin Durant had some kind of injury and they thought it was an Achilles, and he sat out. And then when they got to the finals, they kind of rushed him back, and then he ended up hurting his Achilles worse than it was before. So then he was out the whole next season. Brooklyn Nets literally signed him, and then he didn't play for the whole first season of his contract. He didn't play. So I don't think it's worth the risk that could be involved because the Jets don't really have anything to play for.
Yeah, I mean, if the Jets had a winning record and Zach Wilson was actually putting up numbers, and keeping them afloat, maybe. But they benched Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle's the quarterback. So yeah, it's just not with it. Now, two things can be true. Number one, what JJ said as far as the nutrition and going the natural route and everything like that. And I can't say what I want to say because we might get canceled. But on that note, he's absolutely correct about Lindy knows where I'm going with that. But with JJ said on that, that's correct. But the other thing that can be true is this is not worth it. The Jets got a losing record. They're going nowhere fast. I would say take that time to maximize your healing and everything. Get back to just kind of get back into the groove of throwing the ball. Kick it up a notch in training camp next year, and then just come back for sure 100%. Next year. Because, I mean, it would have to take some sort of, they're not mathematically eliminated, but they would have to take some pretty monumental collapses from some other teams for the Jets to. Oh, go ahead, JJ.
No, I'm going to wait till you finish because it's adding on.
Oh, no. I was saying it's going to take some monumental collapses because I didn't get a chance to check earlier. But I don't even know if the Jets are even still in the hunt. Even if they're still in the hunt, they're going to need a world of help in order to even have a shot. So I just don't think it's worth it. Go ahead, JJ.
And add on to the fact that your home stadium is a stadium that players hate playing in because of the risk of injury. Like your home stadium has caused career and season-ending injuries for quite a few people. You yourself injured yourself at this stadium, and it's just you're older. I hear it. I get it. I know you want to make that splash, but y'all have said it. They ain't going anywhere. You're not going to do anything. You're not going to be anywhere. So why even try to come back and burn out your energy and not make it? Maybe, Aaron, I get you, Aaron, because your Super Bowl was off a team that nobody thought could do it, and then you reeled off 6 straight wins and went to the playoffs and then went all the way through. But that was back when you were like 25, 26, 27, 28. You're about to be 40 years old now, and these guys are bigger and faster and stronger than you. Just
So
it's
before
okay.
Lindy goes, the Jets are 4-7. Their upcoming games against the Atlanta Falcons this Sunday. Then they play the Houston Texans at home. Then they go to Miami to play the Dolphins. Commanders at home, Browns on the road, and Patriots on the
Woo!
road.
They got
So
Browns in Cleveland.
yeah, and they have an outstanding defense. So yeah. But Lindy, your thoughts about Aaron Rodgers?
It's honestly ridiculous. And it kind of, the point of the NBA and everything, it kind of reminds me, and you know, remembering what led to Kobe Bryant, rest his soul, tearing his Achilles, was the fact that he didn't have a very good team around him. He's having to play more minutes without proper load management, conditioning, so on and so forth, and because of the abuse that he went through, that's what led into him tearing his Achilles in the long run, and he wasn't the same after that. But again, it's a different sport with football. But my point is, if you're in this much of a rush to get back, and you got 300 plus pound men running at you to try and sack you and everything. It's a lot different than the game of basketball, because you're going to be subjected to a lot worse punishment, for that matter. Um, and then, I mean, I don't know if this is along the lines of like irrelevancy as a question, but does any of this have to do with the level of security that Robert Saleh has as a head coach, with how it's been going with Zach Wilson and this project just not necessarily working out with him being a top pick out of BYU? So, I mean, he was supposed to be like one of the next better quarterbacks for the Jets to have, and it just hasn't been going well over there. Like, I don't think they've been meeting proper expectations. So you just named off their remaining 6 games. You mean to tell me that they're going to win all 6 and have themselves sitting at 10-7 to try
That's
and
pretty much what
salvage
they would have to do
anything?
to make the playoffs.
So I
With Tim
mean,
Boyle as quarterback.
is this for the sake of trying to salvage what's not there, or is just Aaron doing this for himself to an extent of extra conditioning? I have no idea, because by the looks of it, he's practicing like he wants to play again. But I have no idea. I
Don't
think
get me
the I
wrong.
think the recovery point's more
I think
extraordinary.
his recovery is amazing, but
It's extraordinary, yeah.
I don't think that it's. We've seen it too many times. The thing I said about Kevin Durant, I
Mhm.
literally, I can just see the same thing happening, and for that reason, it's enough for me to say we have too much money invested into you. Take the off
Mhm.
season, get healthy, and we'll try to compete next year. Because you're already 4-7. Like, you pretty much have to be perfect to even have a chance.
Yeah. I think
But
Joe
anyway,
Douglas knows better too, to try to want to see that risk happen. He knows better than to not let that happen.
yep. And Aaron Rodgers won 4 league MVPs, but who will win the league MVP this season? Right now, Jalen Hurts is the slight favorite over Patrick Mahomes after last night's game against Seattle. Dak Prescott is right there at third. So the question is, should Jalen Hurts win the MVP? Should he be the MVP right now? Yes or no? And if not, who is the MVP?
Well, real quick, I said that the end of that Monday Night Football game, Eagles at Chiefs, would determine who's the front runner. Jalen Hurts, I think that was his third. He just came off against the Bills, his fourth or fifth straight game where they were down at the half and won the game. He's got 28 total touchdowns on the season. He's the reason why they're 10-1, and they're actually beating good teams. Unlike that guy in Dallas who had his best win just last night against a 6-5 Seattle. No shade, just stating facts. But Hurts, he's doing it, and he's doing it. Not to mention, as mentioned earlier, the toughest schedule in the league, and you only got one loss. I mean, he's the front runner in my opinion, and I'm not going to say it's not close because you still got that guy in Kansas City, and anything can happen with 5 games left. The next 2 games, they got Frisco this weekend. They got the Dallas game next weekend. So if anyone doesn't have him as MVP right now, then the next 2 games should decide for you. JJ, what you got?
Statistically, if we're talking, the guy in Dallas would have a better case for MVP than the one against in Philadelphia. If we're doing statistically, because the touchdown interception ratio does factor in when you're talking about quarterbacks. And let's be honest, Jalen has had his turnovers up. I think he has more turnovers this year than he did all of last season. He's had some uncharacteristic games. Now, the MVP is also about who's watching it the most, and that does give him the best chance to have himself cement a case because he's going to have a lot more primetime matchups. He's going to face tougher teams. He's got the San Francisco 49ers this weekend. But like you said, if he struggles against San Francisco, which you've seen against teams like the Jets, the Chiefs, the Bills, he has had that issue. It could do more harm to him than good. So if we're talking right now, this is probably the bigger game of his season to prove to people that he should be the MVP because everyone has considered, even with the Chiefs doing what they've doing, everyone has considered San Francisco and Philly as like the class of the NFL. I will say, given what they have, it's between him and Mahomes for me because I think you can't underestimate all the stuff that they've been through on the offensive side and just all the things that's going on. He still is figuring out ways to come out and ways to win. And so it's between those two. I got Mahomes right now, but I can't quite say that Jalen can't overcome. But you're gonna have to put it up on these teams, man. You're gonna have to put it up. You can't keep having slow starts and have to chug your way back when you're a 10-1 team with all that talent that everyone thought it was. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just. You're supposed to be contending with the best of the best. During Patrick Mahomes' MVP year, when he came against the best of the best, his level of play didn't really drop. He matched the LA Rams back when they had Jared Goff when they had the highest scoring game possible. Even in Lamar Jackson's MVP season, when they faced the top teams, they handled business and he had a decent and pretty good game. Jalen's got to do that with these teams because to be the MVP, which means that is basically in my mind, when you face these teams, that's going to show why you're the MVP because you're going to show up and show out. So we're going to see
What
what's up
about
with
his,
Jalen.
what about his performance against Buffalo? The whole second half, he was outstanding. Finished the
But
game with
he had
5
to
total
come.
touchdowns, a game winner.
But he had to come from behind to beat a team that was really on down to a 500 record, basically. That's not a team I would expect you to have to come from behind, knowing the type of team you have and knowing the type of team that they have and what they're doing. I need to him, like I do with my quarterback, I need a complete game. I need to dominate these teams start to finish. Not just Dallas. Not just Dallas. I need you to dominate these other teams. Dominate them. I need you to show up and beat them the way you would beat a Dallas Cowboy team because we already know what the Cowboys are about. We know if you face San Francisco, you know you may see them again in the NFC title game. So that to me is more of a higher quality opponent
Probably
than
will.
than destroying Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, objectively, Jalen and the offense were awful in the first half against the Bills. I think it was, and let me see, what was he?
Hurts only had 33 passing yards.
He
I
was
was mad because I
four.
started him.
He was 4 of 11 for 33 yards and a
Mhm.
passer rating of 7. I mean, they really didn't have an answer for what Buffalo was doing defensively. This was a team that we understand has a very good secondary. Their edge rushers are a little bit underrated. Their linebacking core is very good. And yeah, where I'm going to go with this is I do not want to be objective about this because again, I have to be consistent because it's a topic for discussion tomorrow. But I'm not going to say that he's not, and I'm not going to say that Dak deserves it more or Mahomes deserves it more. Right now, it should arguably be a toss-up. I don't think there is a clear favorite right now. Um, and that's going to solely be determined by the rest of the season. I mean, Jalen would have a stronger case if we lock up I think it's going to take, 2 or 3 games to lock the number 1 seed in the NFC. And like we're clear. Nobody else is going to come close. It doesn't matter. I think it's along those lines. I don't remember. I don't remember. But for the Cowboys, 4 of their last 6 games, offensively, they have scored 40 or more points. That's pretty hard to do. All things considered, with strength of schedule, I mean, you can call it for what it is, but this is the same team. This is the same team that beat the Jets by 20 that we lost to. The same team that whooped the Commanders on Thanksgiving that we had a hard time beating 2 times. So, I mean, as much as I don't want to make a case for Dak Prescott, he's making the case for himself to be in strong contention along with Patrick Mahomes, which was a given from the very beginning. Of those 40-point games that the Cowboys have had, the Thursday night game, last night's game, was the only one that was a one-score game. Every other time that they've scored 40 or more points, they won by 2 or 3 scores. So, I mean, I think that's also a credit to how strong their defense is as well, because we've seen Deron Bland with the amount of interceptions he's been getting. A couple of their linebackers have stepped up when they've lost Overshown for the year because of the ACL injury. They've lost Van Der Esch because of his neck. So you got quite a few defensive players for them stepping up. And that's not to mention Trevon Diggs either. They lose their number 1 corner. Bland comes out of nowhere. So there's a lot of guys for the Cowboys rising to the occasion, and it's showing on the field. So I mean, collectively, yeah, I just don't think there's a clear favor for MVP right now. Dak can be number 1, Hurts can be number 1, Mahomes can be number 1. And if you wanna throw some offensive playmakers in there, I think Tyreek Hill should still be in discussion because he was in the discussion early in the season for how fast he reached 1,000 yards. So yeah, I don't think there's a clear favorite right now.
So it's interesting enough because the guy in Houston has better numbers than Jalen Hurts. He has better
Not
numbers than
all
Jalen
about
Hurts.
numbers.
If we're talking statistically, and statistics do matter to the MVP. You're not going to give the MVP to the best team in the league and their worst player on the team who doesn't have the most production. It's just saying that we need more. I didn't even agree with it when they were saying Lamar Jackson was the MVP because I didn't think his numbers were warranting of that. I feel the same way. If we're looking at it, CJ Stroud, let's say they finish out and they get to a playoff spot and they get like, let's say 10-7 or so, but his numbers be out the chart. 19 touchdowns to 5 interceptions right now. Jalen has 18-10. That's got to change a little bit. You can't have any. You ideally want to get to about 30 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, or at least 27 touchdowns and interceptions. So we're at the interception mark that you need to change on there. And it's just I only brought that up because we're going to give that for context as to why those numbers have to be a little bit better. Jalen Hurts last year would have had more worthy of a case for MVP than Jalen Hurts this year.
He finished second last year.
Rightfully so, because he came against. Even now, I feel like I would take that season that guy over this one because this one has struggled and made uncharacteristically bad plays when I did not see that last year. I did not see that last year.
To Chris's point in the comments talking about a lot of pick sixes on defense, and the offense isn't scoring all of the points that the Cowboys have been able to score. The defense is only able to do that from an aggressive standpoint if the offense is efficient enough to allow them to do so. If you're a team that goes out there offensively and can't move the football down the field, and you're having to punt on too many occasions to where you just have no system, you keep putting your defense out there, you're not putting them in enough positions to be aggressive enough to force turnovers. So a lot of defensive efficiency stems from the offense being just as efficient in moving the ball down the field, against your opponent to put yourself in those kind of situations. So I mean that's why football is the ultimate team sport, because you can't yeah, defense wins championships, but what good is that if your offense isn't good enough to score points? The defense can't do it the entire game. So
All right, gotta close out the segment there just so we have some time for the non-sports topic. But I do think Jalen Hurts should be the MVP. The way that he has led this team in the second half of games, there's a lot of quarterbacks in the league that would fold in that situation, but he has been
yeah.
on fire when it matters the most. That's why he's the MVP. Jay, please lead us into our non-sports topic.
All right, so our non-sports topic is put on the screen there. Um, so the Diddy Cassie saga. For those of you all who don't know, Cassie, who was his ex-girlfriend and a former artist on The Bad Boy, recently came out with a ton of allegations of abuse and such that occurred during their relationship together. She filed a lawsuit, and within 24 hours, Diddy settled for $30 million. And now more and more who are associated with Diddy or who may have been to a few of his parties, they are coming out now even more and saying like, yeah, this is what I witnessed and whatnot. There was even testimony from Kid Cudi who stated that Diddy blew up his car when he found out that him and Cassie were dating. And so it isn't just this, but I wanted to get people's thoughts on not only this situation, but just overall the wealthy in entertainment. So not even music, but like movies, whatnot. Hell, even politicians. Just the wealthy and the dark side to it. Because there have been some horror stories behind the wealthy and them having the money and the power to do the things they do. I kind of want to start off with JJ first, man. What you got? Because I kind of had you in mind when I thought about this, because we do the music thing. So I was like, you know what, man? I don't know how much of it you know, but just give me thoughts on it.
So I do know a little bit, but I will say this: when you're talking about this wealth and dark side of the wealth and power side, I go back to Scream 3. In Scream 3, there was a scene where Courtney Arquette at the time was talking to the head guy who was like the head director about Sidney Prescott's mom, how she went to Hollywood and they used to have these parties where they were just tossing the girls all around town and whatever. And he said it was a different time back then. That's what we came up on. And a lot of these older individuals in wealth of power stem from that type of mentality back in the day. So none of these horror stories still surprise me. I think there's a lot more out there because that's just unfortunately how that business is. That's what happens when you have people who have wealth and power. The unfortunate thing about this is Cassie bit off more than she could chew, because I promise you, when someone is young and trying to aspire to be great, and you got a man flashing millions at you and showing you attention, even if your gut tells you nah, you still unfortunately are going to do it. And now that happens so much in this industry because you're trying to make it, you're trying to do whatever is being told to be able to move up in this company, in this business, and you got this man who is now, not only is he interested in your work, he's being nice to you. He's flirting with you. He's coming on to you. He's promising to be your man, which means you're going to keep racking the money. You're going to keep racking in the bills and stuff. But with those type of people, it's all about control. Their money is their control. Their money, they know that in this world, money makes the world go around. You don't find too many people who's going to pass down a couple $1,000,000. And if they do, they're going to be looked at like they're crazy. Now, the fact that he settled because he has a lot to lose. She's smart. She did that. But she's was had the ability to do that because she, had made some money for herself. But all the other people are coming down now because they probably didn't have the strength or someone like her to come out and say something to them.
True.
Yeah.
She did
Which
open
is
a lot of. She opened a lot of.
which is why if
Yeah.
find out years later, just like R. Kelly's thing came out years later, and this stuff has been going on for 30 years for these people. I'm pretty sure they're not that's not the only person, man, girl, or guy that he might have done something with. But that's what it is. It's all about power and control for the wealthy out here. And sadly, in this business, and a lot of women will talk about it in this business. Keke Palmer talked about it all the goddamn time
She
about
did.
some videos she turned down because it sacrificed her integrity. And she said she'll figure it out herself. And she did. Some women, unfortunately, don't have that same strength. And that's what we've seen with this whole situation with Cassie.
Yeah. I mean, Cassie came. She was signed at like 18. I mean, pretty. It's the young, pretty impressionable man with power, flashing the money. Yeah, you're right. Lindy, let's get your thought. I don't know how much you know about this situation, but just from what you've seen from like the wealthy and powerful in the entertainment business.
No, I don't got a whole lot to speak on it, but I think a consensus feel is that you know what like just the immoral value that money brings to the table, and a lot of times how you know the level of corruption that it provides when it's taken out of hand. Um, Even when you have all the money, there's a lot of people that end up not being happy in the end. Sadly, what was it for? I'm trying to remember names, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. But just people that had it all and still weren't happy. But yeah, no, that's pretty much all I got personally.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Mhm.
money's just awful.
Well, we'll kind of wrap this up with JT. Your thoughts, man?
Money equals power. So whenever a person has money and fame and stuff, it I don't want to say like gives them a right to do whatever they want, but a lot of people change for the worse after they have like that first feeling of success. And it really
Mm,
changes them as a person.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why it's not really surprising to see people rise to fame and rise to stardom, and then do all these dark things, and then they just feel like that it's normal for them, and they can get out of it by giving somebody $1,000,000 or whatever because they're not going to say anything. So no, like it's just something that's normal in pop culture. So that's what I got.
yeah.
Unfortunately, it is normal, But now we'll just wrap up with this. Seemingly, what Cassie has done is kind of opened up the floodgates. And there's a lot of accusations of, she did it for the money and whatnot. But then you look at what everybody else, like Diddy's former bodyguards coming out and giving accounts. Young Jock has gave his accounts on some of what he's seen at
Mhm.
parties about how Diddy made her shave like the whole left side of her head, like it was wicked. But there's gonna be a lot more to come from this and everything. But that's all I got, man. We
So
can wrap up,
I'm gonna
JT.
I'm gonna I'm gonna let y'all finish with this one as well because this happened on the Real Housewives of Atlanta. Long story short, Phaedra had told that said Candy was basically her and her husband were drugging and raping people down in their basement. That rumor was about Tiny and Ti. So let's
I
not.
remember that too.
So these people, when you have look at Darren Sharper, you have power, you have money. Unfortunately, and I'm
Deshaun
not
Watson.
I'm not victim blaming. I'm just saying you gotta sometimes stop yourself, no matter how much money is flashed to you, because how many times do we go to a club or a bar and some hot big person's there, and then you look at how the girls are dressed, and you look at all the girls and what they're doing. It's like we got as some. If you are a person of integrity, you have to, and it sucks because when you're trying to come up in this game, you get to that line where you have to either sacrifice your integrity for that greater good of that money, or you go and keep your integrity and have to find it even harder to make it there. If you really don't want to have that potential of being passed around, raped, possibly all these other things, then it's gonna that choice is gonna have to be made by you because it's always gonna come. You're not, unfortunately, with women in this industry, especially music, you're not going to get up in this industry if they don't think that you're sexy. Sad to say it, but us men are the reason why women have to sexualize themselves for the industry.
A lot of times it's how clean or dirty that cash is at the end of the day too.
A
Where
lot of
you know
people
where
see cash as okay, yeah. And a lot of people don't care. You know,
nope.
dirty or clean, they just see cash and they need it. I told somebody this the other day, if you wave a dollar bill and somebody who needs it bad enough, you'd be surprised what they'll do for it.
I'm gonna
But
give
that's
you a. I'm sorry, I have to say this because this is actually a good topic. I'm gonna give you a story because there's also another thing about Garcia Buenavenez, who used to be on Jamie Foxx show or whatever. She listened to her gut when her integrity was about to be compromised because she talked about a story how she went to Bill Cosby's house one night to practice some acting. She took a drink. She felt funny. She walked out. She walked out. She made the choice to said no. I'm not going to stay knowing that I didn't feel right. And then lo and behold, what happened with Bill Cosby? So like women got it unfortunately, and Garcelle turned out fine. She's making millions of dollars. She still made a life in her career. There's always a better way. Just because this way looks like it's the only way, there's always a better way. So I would encourage y'all, just please, if you don't want this to go down and you really value and protect yourself, you got to stand your ground.
yeah. All right, JT, we can wrap up now, man.
That's about all we have time for tomorrow. Lindy and I will be on at noon Eastern tomorrow.
Thank you, baby.
Saturdays at noon Eastern is a new time for LinkedIn, talking about the Eagles. So make sure you guys tune in for that.
Thank you, guys.
And Lindy, you got anything else you want to say?
No, I don't. I'm ready for I'm ready for LinkedIn, man. We got a packed show tomorrow.
Every
We're-
time you say Lindy, because we called Tyler Linderbaum on the Ravens Lindy, so I'm
Mm,
just like Lindy,
Uh,
Lindy.
hey,
mm.
linked in the end zone still going on, right?
Yeah, it is. Sometimes it's a little difficult to find guests to
That's
really get
cool.
really get to the timing and everything because I try to have it at I try to have it either at
I
11
like
or
that.
noon. I do
Mhm.
have an idea for next week though, so yeah, just putting it together.
Cool.
Oh, I like
All right.
that. This is so cool.
While JJ plays with I'm gonna go have a drink, man. JJ needs a
Bro,
fix, man.
he's like a child playing with
He's
Snapchat.
a
All
Okay,
right, you
anyway, guys,
guys.
Wow.
Love y'all.
we gotta go
Talk to
off
you soon.
there, man. This is getting out of control.